Good morning. Today is Thursday, August 5th, 2021. This past Sunday, John Syrtash passed away. You may not have heard his name, but he was a giant in the history of Canadian Jewry and beyond. John was a family lawyer in Toronto for decades. He is one of those intimately responsible for Federal Bill 21.1. That's also sometimes referred to as the Get Law. That's a law that says that according to federal Canadian law, if a couple is divorced, but one of the spouses has not taken the steps to allow the other spouse to remarry within their religion, then a judge can withhold listening to any pleading from that offending spouse. In other words, it's a way to help a woman, usually a woman, it could also be a man, but usually a woman, from becoming an aguna, a woman who is chained to a marriage where the marriage is clearly over, but the husband refuses to give a get, a Jewish divorce, and that chains her. The word aguna means a chained person. It anchors her, it chains her, and does not allow her to be able to remarry. That became a provincial law in Ontario in 1986, and it became federal law in 1991. Experts estimate that that law reduced the incidence of aguna, which is a terrible, terrible thing. First of all, it's an act of domestic abuse. It is a horrible crime in Jewish law. It reduced the incidence of aguna by about 85%. So it is then and still remains a tremendously helpful law. That law was passed due to the efforts of many people who worked very, very hard to write it and then to lobby for its passage. John, together with Rabbi Taub, at that time the rabbi of the Bayit in Toronto, Rabbi Schmidman of blessed memory, Norma Joseph, and many others were responsible for drafting and for advocating for its passage, and it required great skill to write a secular law that would help women. And by the way, it helps not only Jewish women, it also helps women of other religions, specifically Muslim women. But to be able to write a law that is effective in secular law, but also is in accordance with Jewish law, takes great skill and great expertise. And John was one of those primarily involved in this effort. In 2005, John spoke at a legal conference in Israel, and he talked about this law, and he talked about the legal basis for it, but he also told a couple of personal stories. He said in that speech, "I must express to you the joy I felt in having created this law. Once passed in the legislature, I remember a group of us dancing the hora outside the committee room. I can remember that about 2 years after its passage, a young Jewish religious woman came up to me at a restaurant, and she was holding a beautiful baby in her arms, and she said, 'Mr. Syrtash, do you see this child? If it were not for your get law, I would never have been able to remarry, and this baby would never have been born.'" And then he told the following story. So he said that initially, the Attorney General of Ontario, Ian Scott, was opposed to the legislation. And John said in this speech that he felt over and over again that Yad Hashem, the hand of God, was guiding and controlling events. And he told the story that by the end of their lobbying efforts, this attorney general came to be a supporter. And it was with his help that the law passed. And this attorney general told the following story. As this debate was going on, this man, a non-Jewish man, this man went to a small town in northern Ontario, a town that probably had never seen a Jewish person. If anybody knew about a Jewish person, it must have been from television. And the Attorney General, Ian Scott, he stopped to fill his tank with gas at a gas station. So while the gas attendant was pumping his gas, this teenager, this man, recognized him, and he said, "Are you Attorney General Ian Scott?" And he said, "Yes, I am." And so this teenager said to him, "Well, what are you doing about the get law?" And when the Attorney General realized people in Northern Ontario, who he never assumed there were any Jews whatsoever, cared about this law that helped to change the outcome. And it was at that time that John realized that the Yad Hashem was guiding and leading to the passage of this law in Canada. The Minister of Justice for Canada and later Prime Minister Kim Campbell spoke about the need for this GET legislation, and on the final reading in Parliament in 1991, she proclaimed that the GET law was Canada's gift to the Jewish people. And since it happened to be a Friday afternoon, she then concluded by wishing them a good Shabbos. I had the pleasure of knowing John and working with him. In 2015, I was working on the halachic prenup for Canada. Even though Bill 21.1 was and is very, very helpful, there remained a number of situations that it could not cover. From the beginning of my career, I have required every couple I marry to execute a halachic prenup. Originally, I used a text suggested by Rabbi Moshe Feinstein. Later, when it became available, I was using the text of the RCA, the Rabbinical Council of America. That document, by the way, after over 25 years of usage, has a 100% success rate in preventing a woman from becoming an aguna. It is an absolute solution, if executed properly, to the problem of aguna in our day. When I came to Canada, I learned that the existing documents would not be valid according to Canadian law, and so I began the process of drafting a new document. And I consulted with halakhic authorities, with retired judges, with lawyers, with law professors, to make sure that this new document, a halachic prenup that would be signed by the couple, it's not a law like 21.1, but a halachic prenup, to make sure that it would be acceptable both according to Jewish law and in accordance with Canadian law. I spent most of the time consulting with people in Quebec. In Montreal, that's where we live. Once I had a draft that met with consensus, I wanted to consult with experts in Toronto to make sure that it would also be valid in Ontario and the rest of Canada in addition to Quebec. And so in November 2015, John was one of several Toronto lawyers and experts that I met with in order to describe the document, the basis for the language, and to get their feedback. And John in particular gave me excellent and generous feedback that led ultimately to the document being publicized and published in February 2016. It is now in use and required by many rabbis across Canada. I myself have had the tremendous good fortune to help couples execute this document for 4 different weddings just in August, thank God. And rabbis across Canada are using the same document. There are so many women and men across Canada and beyond who owe a deep debt of gratitude to John Syrtash, even if they never heard his name. Zecher Tzadik Livracha. May his memory be a blessing to his family and to the myriads of people that he has helped and will continue to help through his work. My friends, I want to wish you a great day, and I look forward to seeing all of you soon in person.